Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live streaming. I appreciate you all, whether you're watching us on YouTube, on Rumble, or on X. I'm very happy to have Dr. Marwa Osman back on Syriana Analysis. She's a prominent journalist based in Beirut and a geopolitical analyst. And I'm very happy to hear that she is sound and safe, and her family are also safe after the bombardment of the historical bombardment, I would say, by the Israeli occupation forces on southern Lebanon and also on the southern peripheries of the capital of Lebanon, Beirut. Marwa, thank you so much for coming back again on Syriana Analysis. It's always a pleasure to listen to your thoughts about what's happening in your country, especially in these dire times. And I think that we have to always shed light on the suffering of the people to begin with. Therefore, I would like to start this conversation with you by asking you what happened today, basically in Lebanon, in southern Lebanon. What were the acts of hostilities conducted, first of all, by Israel against Lebanon? And what has Hezbollah done today against the Israeli occupation forces? I think we are having a little technical problem with Marwa's internet. As you may guys know that she's at the moment in Lebanon, and the internet is also suffering in Lebanon due to the bombardment of the Israeli side. And many of the internet providers are also receiving some blows, and they are also suffering when it comes to the connection and the speed of the internet. So we will wait for Marwa to join us again on Syriana Analysis from Beirut, because it's important for us to shed light on the suffering of the Lebanese people. Hi, Marwa.
Of your
I was wondering.
question, I'm ready to answer, so we could make sure that we have internet enough for
Yeah, yeah, I was
this
asking you about.
show. We'll talk about the internet connection, but let me tell you about. Yeah, I heard your question. Let me start by saying that over the past week, it has been unprecedented attack after the other by Zionist Israel against Lebanon, starting with the detonation of the pagers and the walkie-talkies on Tuesday and Wednesday of last week, followed by an airstrike on South Lebanon, where we are still trying to get to the people under the rubble. It happened on Friday. Today is Tuesday. We're still not to the second floor yet of the eighth floor building. It was actually two buildings, 40 apartments that were brought down on the heads of the people, because Israel was doing, listen to this, a targeted strike, a precise strike on the southern suburb of Beirut. And after that, Israel decided to escalate by having a line of fire all across South Lebanon. And when I say all across, I mean there is no town in Lebanon that was not hit. I have family members who were, alhamdulillah, saved, but we would have been today in a funeral had it not been for the fast escape that they made from that house, because they were hit with 2 rockets and they were able to escape from the window of the kitchen barefoot, with barely the pajamas that they were wearing, and run for their lives. Also in Biqa, this was the very first unprecedented move by Israel in a bombardment and a line of fire as well, against the Biqa region, where in less than 24 hours, we had more than 500 civilians, and I mean civilians, families wiped out the face of the earth, not Hezbollah fighters. Hezbollah is already mentioning who their fallen martyrs are. I'm talking about actual civilians. This is a number by the Ministry of Health in Lebanon, by Dr. Firas Tawir, in the Minister of Health in Lebanon. I'm sorry, Firas Al-Abyad, the Minister of Health in Lebanon. And he's saying that it is more than 500, actually it's more than 540, with thousands of people injured. And it's all on tape, and it's all in photographs, and Israel cannot be prouder, and we cannot be more resistant to fight back. Now, how did Hezbollah respond? Hezbollah has been firing at very strategic military sites inside of occupied Palestine, sites that are 70 to sometimes 120 kilometers away from Beirut, ending off with a ballistic missile this morning at 6 a.m. to Tel Aviv itself. Now, let us first talk about what happened on the 24th of September and why it's very important. We had the attack on an HN headquarters. It's a facility where they make ammunition. They actually manufacture ammunition, the ammunition that was killing our people. So that was put ablaze. There was also Amos base, which is a very important strategic base also. There was also the Megiddo airport, where the airplanes, most of the airplanes that conducted the airstrikes on Lebanon was hit. And there was also later on Dado. Dado base is a very important base, especially to help out with the logistics for the Air Force in a nearby airport as well. So these four issues were hit. These four areas were hit. And lately was the ballistic missile by Hezbollah towards Tel Aviv. This is not the first time that Hezbollah bombs Tel Aviv, unlike what some media was saying, because after the assassination of Fuad Shukr, Hezbollah retaliated against the 8200 division, and it's in the suburbs of Tel Aviv. So it's not the first time that they actually hit Tel Aviv, but it's the first time they use a ballistic missile. And the ballistic missile and the new missiles that they've been using, whether Fadi 1 and Fadi 2, or the newest one, which is Qadr 1, they're all, we had weapons that are Fadi 1 and Fadi 2 that were enhanced and developed by Syrian, martyred Syrian engineers, who with the help and with the expertise also of Hezbollah engineers were able to modify this rocket. And the person who actually modified it was killed in the Syrian Research Center by an Israeli airstrike, because this is what Israel does. It wants to kill everyone and anyone who dares slip their head in front of Israel. And you have the Qadr 1. We don't really have a lot of information about the Qadr 1. We just know it's a ballistic missile. We are sure it's not a hypersonic missile, but it's a ballistic missile. And we know it's a short to medium range missile. So Hezbollah starting with the very bare minimum of the weapons that he has and shooting Tel Aviv already. So you can imagine if can you imagine if you see like Iskandar or Tochka flying from Lebanon all the way to Tel Aviv? What will happen in that case? So I think Hezbollah is escalating on an equilibrium basis, but Israel is going in a way that it is spelling all-out war. And I think the way things have escalated also this morning as well, and up until today, we had Kisirwan being bombed, Jbel was bombed just 15 minutes ago as well. So areas which are usually mostly Christian inhabited areas, but you know, Lebanon is so mixed that even in Jbel and Kisirwan, you have Shia villages. So they've been bombing those Shia villages as well. But this is also an escalation because it's putting pressure on the allies of Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Christian allies of Hezbollah in Lebanon, for simply supporting the Lebanese people, especially those that were fleeing from South Lebanon and Dahia, because it was for the first time in history, I can tell you, Kevork, that the Lebanese people stood together outside of any sort of differences. The level of support and solidarity that we're seeing on the ground from the east to the west, the north, the middle, everyone is opening their houses, opening facilities, opening hospitals and schools for the hundreds of thousands of refugees and displaced people who left their homes. I myself am displaced for the second time. I was displaced from my Khiam home, and now I'm displaced from my Beirut home because I live in the suburbs of Beirut. Thankfully, I have a lot of friends who offered uh, to
We will just take a moment, Marwa, because your voice started to be cracked. And while her, I will just
to have us in, and one of
I would just pause for a second. Marwa's internet started to crack, just to say something for the audience, those who are participating in the comments. On this channel, guys, I don't ban anyone, even if you are a Zionist and you believe that we, the Levantine people, do not deserve to live and we should be get killed. And just for those who don't know, I'm a Christian from Syria. I'm Syrian, Armenian ethnicity, and I'm a Christian. I'm not a Muslim. I'm not an Islamist. I am not a jihadist. Some of the people were writing funny comments. I let everyone to express their opinions. However, I just want to tell everyone in the comments below to not engage in this type of commentary, because our goal on Syriana Analysis is to have a healthy conversation and to spread awareness and also information. So some of these trolls, when they join this comment section, they just want to try to sabotage this thing, because what we want basically for Syriana Analysis. Thank you, Marwa, for joining back again. I just was saying that to the audience, there are some of the Zionist trolls in the comments. Just don't engage with them. They're trying to sabotage the healthy discussion we're trying to make here on Syriana Analysis. And maybe for them we are just utter liars, this and that. I don't care about these type of commentaries. Yesterday somebody asked me, what is your source for the killing of 600 civilians in Lebanon? And I said the
Are
minister
you
minister
serious?
of the Minister of Health of Lebanon, and they said, so the terrorists are the source. So the Ministry of Health of Lebanon is also terrorists for the Zionists. Therefore,
Everyone is
I'm
a
not going.
terrorist. If
Yeah,
everyone is a
so I'm not.
terrorist, Kevork. If you don't, I'm going to stop myself. I'm not going to continue the sentence, but I'm telling you, everyone is a terrorist. If you do not support Zionist Israel, you're a terrorist. Well, we'll see who's the
Yeah,
terrorist
so
at the end of this one.
everybody, I think, outside the bubble of the Zionists know who the real terrorists are and who is waging a state terrorism against its neighbors. Imagine that a country is bombing now Syria, Lebanon, and Palestine simultaneously, and then
And Yemen,
playing
and
victim at the
sometimes
same
Iraq.
and Yemen. Yeah, and simultaneously playing the victim in this case. Marwa, this is fascinating to know all these developments in the region, whereas people still like blinded, or they don't want to see the entire picture. But there are so many reports. For example, I want to show you a report posted by Axios. And Axios says, they claim, those are the claims, of course, that Hezbollah asked Iran to attack Israel. Israeli and Western officials say Hezbollah urged Iran in recent days to launch an attack against Israel as fighting between the Lebanese militant group and the Israeli military dramatically escalated, but Iran has so far refrained, two Israeli officials and one Western diplomat told Axios. Two Israeli officials said Iranian officials told their Hezbollah counterparts that, quote, the timing isn't right for launching an attack against Israel because the Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian is currently in New York for the UN General Assembly. Um, uh, However, the correspondent of Al Jazeera, Ali Hashem, he's a well known correspondent in Beirut, he says a senior Iranian official denied to me the reports circulating in Western media, which claims that Hezbollah asked Iran to attack Israel, citing Israeli and Western sources. He stated this is fake news. I myself asked a Lebanese senior diplomat about this, and he said, he told me that Hezbollah doesn't ask Iran to intervene in a conflict. It's not the relationship between Iran and Hezbollah is not in a way that Hezbollah asks Iran to do something or Iran asks Hezbollah to do something. From your position in Lebanon, how do you see these reports published by Axios? They are quoting senior Israeli officials. And how do you see this relationship between Hezbollah and Iran?
Let's begin by saying that Axios, the one-on-one journalism is to try to find sources as much as possible to have a credible and factual information. And sources are Israelis, so they are terrorists. So it's not credible. But if you go back to, I think it was 3 speeches ago for Sayyid Nasrallah, the chief of Hezbollah, when he revealed for the first time that Yemen, Iraq, Syria, and Iran offered to send thousands of fighters to help out in the support front for Gaza. And he said, Shakar Allah sa'yakum, thank you very much. We don't know where to go with our own. We are overflowing with fighters who are demanding to fight, and we cannot put everyone on the front line. And what would Hezbollah need? Ballistic missiles? He has one. Developed Katyusha missiles? He has one. What do he need? Drones? He's been swarming the skies of Zionist Israel with drones for a year now, to a point that the settlers and the Zionist forces are afraid of these drones more than they are afraid of the missiles, because they know that the drones might actually activate the Iron Dome before the missiles are actually launched, which also proves that the Iron Dome or the Arrow or David's slingshot, they all are not working as they should. So I wouldn't believe such reports before I actually start asking around. And since you started asking around, I could tell you that over the past year, there have been many reports about the relationship between Hezbollah and Iran, where Iran sometimes is asking Hezbollah to stop the fight. This has never happened. It will never happen. People get to forget that the ideology, whether Iran or Hezbollah, and when I say Iran, I say the Islamic Revolutionary Guard of Iran, the IRGC, which is separate and is not, I repeat, is not under the command of the president. In the Islamic Republic of Iran, it has a separate leadership that takes decisions. Yes, they might consult the highest seat in the republic, which is the president, but he doesn't need to know everything. That was the case with President Raisi and also with President Pezeshkian right now. And I'm saying this because people read a bit of the statements that President Pezeshkian rightfully spoke at the UNGA, where he said, we seek peace. What kind of a sane president wouldn't say that? He said, we seek negotiations. What kind of a sane president wouldn't say that? But he says, we also seek to defend our country and to stop the genocide on Gaza. And he's said that multiple times. But people in the West, especially people who work in journalism in the West, would like to show some sort of a schism that is not there, to try to show that maybe Iran is now shifting away. You don't really understand. If you're saying this, you don't understand what Iran is and what the axis of resistance is. They keep telling you stuff like that, but when you compare, they go crazy. They get confused. For example, whether or not Macron stays a president, whether or not Biden stays a president, will the NATO alliance ever be affected?
No, it will not be
Will it?
affected. There are
Exactly.
general
So
headlines.
why? Exactly. So why would a military alliance in West Asia comprised of the resistance forces in West Asia be affected by the change of president in Lebanon, for example? I'm sorry to give Lebanon, for example. We don't have a president for the past 3 years, so don't mind me. And or, for example, the change of a president, let's say, in Iran, or let's say there was a change in cabinet in Syria. There was a change in cabinet last week in Syria. Does that change the alliance between Hezbollah and Syria, or between Lebanon and Syria? If there's a presidential elections and for some reason, God forbid, President Assad is no longer the president of Syria, do you think that would change the relationship between Syria and Hezbollah? It's not based on people. That's why it's a successful force of resistance. If it were based on people, we would have seen Hezbollah collapse with the attack against Shukr and against the biggest force in West Asia, which is the Radwan force. The commander and 13 leaders under his command were taken out in the strike that also took 51 civilians along with it. But Hezbollah remained, because Hezbollah and the resistance in the region does not work in a way that usual, normal combat forces or armies operate. They operate in a different way. And not from now. I think it's way before even the liberation of Lebanon. Iran has never, ever asked Hezbollah to do anything. The only thing they said, what do you want to learn? We'll teach you. Which weapon you want? We'll give you. The same thing in Syria in 2006. President Assad and the Syrian government, they said, we're not going to ask questions. We're just going to open the warehouses for you, take whatever weapons you need, defend yourselves. This is how allies work together. Why is it okay for the United States of America to keep shipping, open an actual line of shipment between Europe and Israel and the US and Israel with non-stop shipments of weaponry, top-notch weaponry, 2,000 pounds bombs that fell on Mawasi camp, made a 9-meter crater, killed everyone there, kids, women, you name it. Why is it okay? But it's not okay for us to have an alliance force to defend ourselves, us, the natives of West Asia. They call us terrorists in our land where we speak the same language and relatively have the same religion or religions, which have been here for the past at least 2024 years, and even before that. And they have the audacity to tell us, the people who are looking at the bombs falling at them, bombs made in the US, paid for by US taxpayers, that we are the terrorists, or we need help from someone who did not give it to us. Then what is the ballistic missile? What is it? In 1982, Hezbollah only had AK-47s and some F-16s, some M16. I wish they had M16. Some M16. But what I'm saying is, it started with a group of people who wanted to defend their land when the 1982 invasion of Beirut started, which means when Israel attacked Lebanon. Even though Israel had been attacking Lebanon before that, but it was the invasion that triggered this kind of a form of front. Fast forward, this few people in a small street in Beirut called the Fathallah Street wrote about this, let's say, 250,000 of fighters. It's way more than that, but let's say it's 250,000 of fighters to defend their land. And they became powerful enough to say, wait a second, if you want to bomb our neighbors, we're not going to let you. If you want to create chaos in Syria, we're not going to let you. If you want to keep killing Iraqis, we're not going to let you. And Yemen is saying, we're 2,000 kilometers away, but we're not going to let you do a genocide, committed the genocide of the century, while we watch and allow your shipments to pass through the route of the Bab el-Mandeb into the Red Sea. These are legitimate rights for peoples to defend themselves, actually put forward and stated by international law, Kevork. We're not making this up. It's the UN Charter that allows us as natives to resist. And Hezbollah is part of the parliament. The Lebanese parliament had voted on a constitution, and the constitution says that it is Lebanon's right to have an armed resistance and fight back. Israel doesn't have a constitution. They don't even have borders. They don't have a map. They don't have a map. They don't have a constitution. And people might ask, why don't they have a constitution? Well, if they have a constitution, it means that they should write some rights in that constitution. And how are they going to give equal rights to the Palestinians if they have a constitution? They don't see them as equal to begin with. They're killing them in the West Bank, Gaza, and Jerusalem. Who is the terrorist here? I let the people
Marwa.
answer.
I just want to answer to a question or a comment by a friend. He says Hezbollah is in jeopardy if they keep the present plan of attack. If Hezbollah keeps allowing attacks like this, they might as well fold. What military group knows an attack comes and allows second round? I just want to answer to this question because from my humble understanding of how Hezbollah operates from 2006 and how they operated in Syria after 2011, what is happening in southern Lebanon now is a relentless bombardment. There is an attempt to eliminate the missile capabilities of Hezbollah. Now, and at the same time to push the civilian population to the north of Litani, and then later to bargain their return in exchange for the return of the settlers to northern Palestine. Now, in this case, what are the elements of strength of Hezbollah, guys? The elements of strength of Hezbollah is, in my opinion, the rocket and missile capabilities, which they don't have to fire their sophisticated rockets and missiles. What they have to do in this case is to keep firing rockets, to keep the north destabilized, to disallow the settlers to come back. And they're successful in this up until this moment. The second thing that they have to do to preserve these missile capabilities, and many people need to know that the missiles and the rockets of Hezbollah are not stored in the kitchens, in the living rooms, like Israel is claiming.
Yeah,
They are
I
the
had one
vast
under my
majority.
bed, you know.
Yeah, the vast majority of them are stored in underground bunkers and tunnels inside mountains, and these mountains are not inhabited
Like
by
the Ahmad
yes,
4 one, which we watched a while back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If people want to know, they can check themselves and see these bunkers. Hezbollah itself published one of their bunkers and how many of these tracks are working in, and they can be opened. Then the skies can be opened and they start firing. So the missile capabilities that Israel claims that they have destroyed 50 to 60%. I think this is a joke. Nobody believes. Even the Israelis do not believe. But raising this point, it aims at destroying the morale of the people in Lebanon. And but the time is not in favor of Israel. When the time passes a week or two or three, if Israel is able to destroy 50% to 60% of Hezbollah's missile capabilities in 48 hours, then it may take another 2 weeks to finish Hezbollah, right? But you will see that in a month, 2, 3, 4, that rockets with hundreds and thousands will still be launched from the Lebanese side. So here the reputation of Israel will be hit again. The second element of strength of Hezbollah, guys, is now for Hezbollah not to hit the civilian population in Israel, because this means because Israelis are hitting the civilians so hard so that Hezbollah starts hitting the civilians, and then the scenes of the bloodshed among the civilians will be used to mobilize public opinion in the United States and in Israel to invade Lebanon and drag the Americans to come. So that the Hezbollah doesn't want to do that. So they are still striking military installations, and they are provoking the Israeli occupation forces by firing these rockets against military installations and provoke a ground invasion of Lebanon. In ground invasion, this is the playground. This is the serious playground if Hezbollah wants to defeat Israel. So this is how Hezbollah is managing this conflict. Many people think that if Hezbollah killed 600 civilians in Lebanon, then Hezbollah has to hit the civilian population. That's not how Hezbollah operates. People need to understand a little bit of this military logic and also how Hezbollah thinks and foresees the conflict in the future. You wanted to say something, Marwa,
Yeah.
or I want to
And
move
I would add to that,
Yeah,
people,
please go.
yes, people sometimes forget that Hezbollah comes rightfully from a ideological background. They for some reason they refuse to understand that Hezbollah refuses to target civilians, even though there are no civilians in Israel. They are all colonial settlers who have served in the Israeli army. They all served in the army, but even if it means that this rocket might fall on the head of a child, Hezbollah is not going to take that responsibility and to take that risk because it is haram in our ideology. Even if your enemy is firing at your babies, it is haram to fire at his babies because they're just babies. They have no responsibility towards what their adults are doing. So that's an ideology for Hezbollah. People tend to not understand this, and people keep saying that Hezbollah is so moral to a point. No, it's not. It's not about. It's not allowed standing on high grounds. It is ideology. You either believe in it or not. But I would add something to what you said about the targeting of military installments. Hezbollah is actually targeting equally how the same way that that Israel is targeting. Because look, Israel is saying that they are targeting the fire capability of Hezbollah, right? Hezbollah is firing back to where the threat is coming from. He is trying to put out airports out of service, military airports. He's trying to put out the facilities, the ammunition facilities, and he also targeted one of the facilities that usually manufactures electronics, because we have forgotten what happened, the scandal that happened last week with the pagers and the walkie-talkies, and Hezbollah promised to take care of that, and they did. And they keep firing at those facilities that were, if you will, the kitchen that cooked up these booby-trapped pagers and send them to Lebanon, where not only Hezbollah members, I'm not going to say Hezbollah fighters, because if you were a fighter, you actually were rid from those detonators, because if you work in office hours for Hezbollah, in the cities, you would have those walkie-talkies and those pagers, and it was nurses and doctors and people who worked in security facilities, private security facilities, that had those pagers. So we're talking about thousands of people, innocent civilians, who were hit in a second only because Zionist Israel thought it was capable of doing a terrorist attack and actually getting away with it. That's not the case.
Everybody called it a terrorist attack. Even the former head of the
Because it
CIA called
is.
it a terrorist
Even
attack.
the military generals in the U.S. Army, when they were asked by journalists, it's online, you could see it. He was embarrassed, confused. He didn't know how to answer. He said, I don't have information. I don't know. But we all know that if Israel has technology, then it's the US that made it. And
Yeah,
it's the US that transferred it to it.
one of the spokesperson of the DoD, the Defense Ministry of Defense in the US, said that he was asked about these pager attacks. He's an African, like a black general, and he said, "I'm not a lawyer." he doesn't know if these are illegal or not. This was really funny. I just wanna answer to Eshrok Bailey. He says, "Kevork, did you enjoy the Hezbollah presence in Syria?" And another one says, "Are you a Christian?" I just want to say that in 2012, when Hezbollah came to Syria and they fought against ISIS, Al-Nusra, Ahrar al-Sham, Jaish al-Islam, Uzbeki, Saudi, Chechen, from all around the world, these terrorists, over 120,000 terrorists came to Syria. Israel actually
who
gave
never
them...
came to support Palestine, by the way.
Yes. And Hezbollah fought against these terrorists and protected even the Christian towns and villages, not exclusively, but there are major battles in Syria, in Hama, in Homs, in Aleppo, in Damascus, or let's say majority Christian towns. Hezbollah fought and they gave victims to protect the Christians, whereas Israel gave these same terrorists, they gave them weapons, cash, training, and also they received them in Israeli hospitals and gave them medical treatment. And if you don't believe me, you can check in a Wall Street Journal full article and also in the Israeli press. Just type on Google Syrian rebels, Israel, support, and you will see. Or go to Al Jazeera interviews and click or type former Mossad, head of Mossad, and al-Nusra, and you will see that the former head of Mossad, he's acknowledging that Israel gave medical treatment to the Al-Qaeda terrorists in Syria. So this is not about if I enjoy their presence in Syria or not. This is about a geopolitical conflict, and in Syria, Hezbollah fought on the side of the secular government of Syria against these terrorists that you guys in the United States consider them terrorists, right? But when it came to Syria, you stood alongside. I'm not talking to the civilians, to the administration.
Yeah, the person who asked you that question, Kevork, why doesn't he go and try to find a Nusra or ISIS? They're very friendly. He can go find them. Find a Nusra or ISIS fighter and ask them if they enjoyed the presence of Israeli Mossad helping them, funding them, and training them to destroy Syria.
Yeah, one of the reasons, you're correct, my friend, Hezbollah came to Syria to ensure a flow of arms to Lebanon. This is one of the reasons. But when Hezbollah fought in Ma'lula, for example, there were no flow of weapons from Ma'lula to one of the ancient Christian towns in the world where people, or Aleppo. This is not a place where weapon flows were happening, but they came there also to support the government against these terrorists. Now, since we're speaking of Syria, I want to show the audience a new article in the Israeli press. This is an article published yesterday. They say not only Hezbollah and militias, thousands of Houthi fighters are being trained in Syria. Against the background of the winds of war in the north, the question arises as to how much the Syrian arena is expected to become a challenge for the IDF, and whether Assad will repay a debt to Nasrallah and the Iranians and lend his backyard to Israel's enemies. Yesterday, we met the Houthi threat from Yemen, but there is already a significant establishment of the Houthis on Syrian soil. Since the Israeli attack in Hodeidah, Houthi forces have begun arriving in Syria as part of what they define as the Iranian preparation for a broad campaign against Israel. They arrive here in groups of dozens through Iran, Iraq, and Jordan, and after crossing the border, they arrive in Damascus and southern Syria. Beyond the capabilities of launching missiles and drones from Syria, there is also a scenario of raids on the Golan Heights from its territory, with thousands of activists of the Shiite militias operating under the auspices of the Revolutionary Guards. This is exactly the vision of Qasem Soleimani, the legendary commander of the Revolutionary Guard who was killed in Iraq a little less than 5 years ago. Have you heard about these reports? Marwa? I asked in Syria and categorically rejected and denied these allegations that there are Houthi militias being trained on Syrian soil, especially in the Golan Heights or near the Golan Heights, to attack on Golan. Let alone Golan is already occupied
Well,
by Israel. It's not Israeli territory.
by April, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
let us begin that if there is a Yemeni, one Yemeni anywhere in Syria, you're going to find it and you're going to see it. I mean,
Yeah.
Yemenis are Yemenis. We've seen videos of them and we've heard them talk. We've heard them in combat. And I don't think they need any training, to be honest with you. I think they would actually help out if they come and train the Syrian army in fighting in a desert, teach them how to fight in a desert, because that's what they did when they kicked out the Saudis from their lands. And when they actually ambushed one Blackwater I don't know, it's like an infantry of Blackwater soldiers that were killed, and their passports were shown on live TV by the Yemenis. They don't need to be here. Actually, Yemenis have been training themselves in their own massive country of how to cross Saudi Arabia to get to Palestine. They're thinking about that now. they're in a very different place. Look, such issues will always try to maybe put Syria in a position that would say that Syria is working against Israel, as if Syria has not been trying to liberate its own land ever since they were occupied, as if Syria is not the main weapon manufacturer and exporter to the resistance in, at least in Lebanon, not to say other resistances in the region, as if Syria hasn't paid enough for being on that side of the resistance. I saw a statement issued today by so-called rebels in the south in Syria that are preparing to attack checkpoints of the Syrian Arab army. This is how terrorists, by the way, operate. That's not me. That's how a military person will tell you. If, like, when you attack a checkpoint, it's not a battlefield, you're a terrorist. But I've seen that, and I think that is one of the new batches that Israel is trying to equip with necessary weapons to try and inflict some losses between the Syrian Arab Army soldiers, and to try and create chaos, organized chaos at the southern part of Syria, to make sure that Syria doesn't interfere in the war if it escalates and tries to help Lebanon by opening a front on the Golan Heights. And if it actually tries to open one, it doesn't need an excuse or a pretext by Hezbollah. It is Syrian occupied land and it has every right to defend itself, especially that Syria keeps bombing the depth of, Israel keeps bombing the depth of Syria. It just bombed Syria last week, killing soldiers and civilians alike, and it keeps doing so. And I think it has conducted maybe more than 2,000 raids so far over the past 10 years over Syria, if I'm not mistaken. And no one stopped it. No one says a word. And when Syria actually activates its air defense missiles, you have the likes of Jordan who deactivate their missiles and allow the Israeli airplanes to use their airspace and then enter from above the 10th base, which is the occupation base by the Americans, to bomb Syria in areas that there are no batteries to support air defense systems. I mean, people who ask those questions or who talk about these reports are people who are basically ignorant about the history and the geography of Syria alike. They either have been in La La Land over the past 13 years, have absolutely no knowledge of what has been happening in Syria and on the border with Lebanon, or they deliberately use the narrative of the Zionist entity and the establishment of the United States of America that is always being repeated in certain talking points by the DoD and by the Pentagon and by the White House spokespersons as well, in a way that always shifts the blame against the people of the land, the natives. We are so bad. We don't have democracy. We are savages. We kill one another, etc., etc. Why are you here then? Leave us, let us kill one another. Why are you here? Why does the United States of America has occupation bases in the eastern part of the Euphrates and the 10th area? Why is the United States of America sending shipment to Israel in the Mediterranean? And the Mediterranean is not belong to the United States of America, nor does it belong to Israel. Why are they sending shipments from the Red Sea, which we saw happily being downed and sunk by the Ansarullah resistance? Why are they operating in Baghdad, killing resistance fighters in Baghdad? Why are they operating in Kurdistan? Why are they part of the Incirlik base in Turkey? Why are they part of the Cyprus bases, the US and UK bases in Cyprus to perform all sorts of espionage and killings across us? Because I know for sure that some of the planes that were bombing us yesterday went and got refueled in Cyprus. And I think that Hezbollah had already issued some statements against that. And Cyprus said it's not our business, it's not our land. So I think if a missile by mistake lands there, it's not being sent against Cyprus, it's being sent against those who are fueling those planes to kill us.
One of our commentators says, does Russia send missiles to Hezbollah? And I'm going to answer this. Russia doesn't send missiles to Hezbollah. Hezbollah doesn't need Russian missiles. Hezbollah has its own factories in southern Lebanon. They manufacture missiles. And there are so many knowledge and technology being shared with Hezbollah by Syria and by Iran. Some of them are manufactured by Syria, some of them are manufactured by Iran, and they copy them also or manufacture samples of them in Lebanon. I think the main Russian missile, let's say, rocket system that they use is the Kornet rockets, again, anti-tank Kornet rockets, and those are all from the stockpile of Syria. Russia doesn't give Hezbollah directly weapons. Syria receives these weapons and then they deliver them to Hezbollah. But the Russians didn't object, let's say, after this was the best marketing for their weapons when the Mirkavas burned in 2006 in southern Lebanon, and the Russians watched their rockets burning the mighty Mirkavas of Israel. Guys, Marwa's X account is in the description below, and also her Telegram account is in the description below. I think it's very important to follow what she says and what she is reporting from Lebanon. It's important to listen to the people on the ground and not to the people who are preaching to you and telling you what to believe and what is the correct narrative. You can learn about the Western narrative or the American or the Israeli narrative. Turn on your TV and you will watch and listen to them. We're not against, we don't want them to stop talking. We don't want to suppress their voices. They can speak, but we have also alternative means here. We're trying to also raise or show you the other side of the story so that you can make up your minds. Marwa, it was a great pleasure to have you back on Syriana Analysis and discuss these issues.
Kevork, I just wanted to thank you, Kevork, if possible. I know the internet connection is not very well, but I'm sorry for that. But we're trying to cope and in these times. But thank you very much for giving a platform for a voice from the ground right here in Lebanon. And I ask the people who are watching us or the people who will watch later just to have an open mind when they look at conflicts happening thousands of miles away and start asking themselves what kind of role are they playing to fuel such conflicts. For example, is their tax money actually being paid to kill people abroad? If they are, this is a moral responsibility on everyone to ask themselves and then to ask their representatives to stop doing that. That's the only thing that we really need, and we are fully capable of defending ourselves.
Yeah. Guys, also, I would like to thank you all. Over 2,250 people watching this now live on YouTube, on Rumble, and on X. I thank you all. If you like this content, you can just hit the subscribe, follow us on social media platforms. And if you like to support the independent work I'm doing, you can become a patron. The link is scrolling on the screen, patreon.com/Syriana Analysis. And I will see you tomorrow, Thursday, 5 p.m. Central European Time, 11 a.m. Eastern American Time. Peace be upon you, upon your families, and peace be upon you, Marwa, and your families. We'll see you.